Welcome to Behind the SetList, the podcast where artists tell the stories about the songs they play live.
As a singer, you get arrangements that change your mind, and that's always a good feeling when you see a blueprint to something that you've loved, but maybe you're feeling a little insecure about adding yet another version of it to the canon.
That's multi-platinum singer Josh Groban talking about covering the Charles Aznavour song She. It's one of the songs Groban is playing on his current U.S. tour, and one of many he's playing from his 2020 album Harmony. Groban talks about his affinity for British rock music, his friendship with composer Stephen Sondheim, and how he picks songs for his set list, and much more in this episode of Behind the Set List.
I'm Jay Gilbert from Label Logic.
And I'm Glenn Peoples from Billboard.
Great to see you, Glenn. How are you?
I'm good, Jay. How are you? And what do you think of our conversation with Josh Groban?
Wow, Josh is such a great story. You know, when he was 17 years old, his vocal coach sent a tape to Grammy Award-winning producer David Foster, who asked Josh to come to a rehearsal for the 1999 Grammy Awards, where, as a stand-in for Andrea Bocelli, he rehearsed Foster's The Prayer with Celine Dion. No pressure, right? That one event sparked interest from Rosie O'Donnell for him to appear on her show the following week, which in turn led to an appearance on Ally McBeal, and he was off to the races.
Yeah, Josh is a natural storyteller, perfect to have on a podcast. I think he could have his own podcast, in fact. That comes through in his live shows. He's talkative when not playing songs from the mini albums he's released over the last 2 decades. In this conversation, we talked a lot about songs from his 2020 album Harmony, which debuted at number 4 in the Billboard 200 chart. One thing we didn't touch on is holiday music. Josh has an amazing sales and streaming history of holiday music, mainly from his 2007 album Noel. But we did touch on his guest appearance on the TV show The Office more than a decade ago. That was a fantastic episode.
Absolutely. Josh is very deliberate about crafting his set list. He understands his audience and how to make sure he plays songs for old and new fans alike. So let me add a thank you for listening to Behind the Set List. Please follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We currently release an episode every other week or so. And please leave a review and comments. That really helps a lot. And if we could ask a favor, if you could just tell one friend about this podcast, we would really appreciate it.
We sure would. Also, look for our Behind the Set List playlist on Spotify that includes all the podcasts along with music either played or mentioned in the podcasts. You'll find Andy Grammer, Kurt Smith from Tears for Fears, Ann Wilson from Heart, Ani DeFranco, country singer-songwriter Haley Witters, and now, this week's episode, Josh Groban.
So, without further ado, here's Josh Groban on Behind the Set List. Let it roll.
Josh, thanks for joining us on Behind the Set List.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Where are you today?
I am in Palo Alto, California, about to play the Mountain View Amphitheater this evening.
Beautiful venue. And this time of year, really nice to be outdoors.
I mean, that's been the case for most of the venues, maybe not the 95-degree with humidity venues. We've had a couple of those this summer, but yeah, now that we're West Coast, we're inching closer to my hometown of Los Angeles, and Mountain View has always been a place we've loved to play. I've played it solo. I did Neil Young's Bridge School benefit there once, and it's just a good memory spot. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're going to be playing, I hear, in Santa Barbara soon, which is close to me. And
Yeah,
that Santa Barbara Bowl, what a beautiful venue that is.
it is. I mean, we love the outdoor venues for a couple of reasons. One, it seems to spark a little bit of a looseness with the audience. There's just a kind of a more casual element to it, which for the kind of music that I make is always a nice thing to have, because I think sometimes people walk into a theater or an arena with a sense of formality of this is going to be a nice kind of golf clappy kind of show. And with the outdoor shows, there's it already feels like summer camp a little bit. So everybody's, having a little wine and on their blankets, and it feels loose. I think it probably feels that way too for some of the orchestras that play there in the summer. To me, it's an ideal way to experience music. And you're duetting with the elements. So it's a little added challenge for us on stage that we like, that sometimes we get, like I said, that heat, and you're just saying, okay, my voice is going to have to cut through this humidity, and I'm going to swallow a bug or two tonight. And then you have places like Red Rocks where we went from 94 degrees the night before to 58 degrees, where I could see my breath on stage, and a fog rolled in, and we were singing through the fog as well. And it was just, the stuff that maybe I would have found kind of nerve-wracking or annoying when I was younger. I find that stuff so wonderful to just kind of flow with whatever weather and whatever experience. It's communal. You're experiencing all that with the audience. So it definitely keeps you on your feet.
When you get to LA, you're going to be at the Greek Theater, right? And pretty mild temperatures in LA these days. What do you think about playing the Greek? Do you like that place?
I love the Greek. It's right near where I grew up, and anytime you can go and play theaters that you were inspired by other artists playing those venues, it's always cool. It's always a great thing to have a hometown. LA is always a little bit of a thing. You play LA and it's going to be, part fans, part family, part industry. And so there's kind of that little added, expectation or pressure when you play, someplace like Los Angeles. But I think that's cut by the beauty of a place like the Greek. It's a very, much like the others, feels very casual, feels surrounded by trees. And it's just a really nice place as a fan to go and see music. There are places in LA that feel like you have to, plan for a month in order to just get parking and figure out where you're going to walk and figure out how you're going to get a sitter and all that stuff. And the Greek is one of those places that feels like it's kind of a hop, skip, and a jump from a lot of places in Los Angeles. So and I filmed a TV special there. One of my first ever televised concerts that I did. I think in 2005, 2004, 2005, was called Live at the Greek. So we did a show there, and it's got a little history for me.
Yeah, beautiful place. Josh, I would love it if you could take us to the Josh Groban School of picking songs to record and play live. And what is it that attracts you to a song? Is it lyrics, melody, mood? Does the artist need to be a personal favorite, so the song is kind of an homage of sorts? What is it? Because there's so much variety in what you choose to play. What are the common threads there?
Well, I mean, sometimes that variety can be a little paralyzing because there are a lot of choices. And my first tour, I had to find songs to throw in because I hadn't recorded very much. And the good thing about having 10 albums to choose from is you got 10 albums to choose from. And the bad thing is that you've got so many songs that you could possibly choose. And I'm very lucky that I've got a fan base who want to listen to the whole album, and every fan has a different favorite. There's always going to be the one or two that I can't get off stage without playing, but the rest of them, we've tried polling fans. What do you want to hear? What are some of the favorites out there? And honestly, it's across the board. I mean, it's really one of those interesting things where whatever I choose is going to please some people and tick off a couple other people. So it just comes down to, for me, what feels like it flows really well, both like an arc of the show, finding stuff that brings the energy down, brings the energy back up, gives some unexpected moments, maybe some opportunities for duets. I want to make sure that vocally I'm also, working my way through 16, 17 songs in a way that feels really healthy and allows me to really press the gas when I want to, and then lay off the gas and make it more intimate. And also I think about live shows when I'm recording. It's something that just inspires me when I'm in the studio to think about how would this feel in front of an audience if I were to perform this with all the whole group on stage. I like to close my eyes and think about that stuff when I'm recording. So for an album like Harmony, where we finally, after recording it basically in our bedrooms, have a chance to be in front of people, I knew for this tour that I wanted to give those songs, that moment that I've been fantasizing about from, my pajamas. I wanted to really let those songs have the full instrumentation and choir and orchestra that I had envisioned while we were recording it in quarantine. So of course this tour is going to be heavy on those songs as well.
So creating a set list, as you just touch on, it's definitely an art form. I mean, how involved are you in actually creating your set lists for tours? And walk us through, what's that process like?
Yeah, it's in some ways it's a little bit different every time. This we were talking a little bit before we pressed record that this was a really interesting tour, kind of unlike anything I've ever done before, because I was usually you're coming out of a huge amount of momentum where you've been traveling around the world promoting, and you've got your land legs as far as just you're in it, you're in the game, you're singing every day, you're doing TV shows, you're just kind of in the momentum and in the spirit of the album before you go off and then do the tour of that album. And it's just kind of usually another chapter of that momentum. And this, I think I probably am speaking for so many artists right now, that this was such a disjointed, inspiring and exciting, but disjointed way of doing this. I think probably the reason why everybody and their grandmother is touring this summer is because we all had the same idea of like, well, now's our window. Let's get these songs out in front of people. It's like when we all decided we wanted to bake banana bread at the same time during COVID. Every artist decided, I want to be the one to tour. Now there's 100,000 of us. So this album came out a while ago, but this is the moment we had, like so many artists, to get out and do it. So all that being said, the set list for this tour, I think we definitely wanted to focus on the album that we weren't able to perform. But as far as all those other things about just the art form of putting the songs together, I fell up on this one, because normally I have a huge amount of time leading up to it to play around, to go into rehearsals singing 10 different options of song orders, and throwing ideas at my band and saying, why don't we try this? Or why don't we blend this song into that song? And really, we're just putting ourselves through a bunch of hoops and mental math, and then just going towards the goosebumps. This tour, I have to say, I was at my brother's wedding and it was in Istanbul, and I came back from my brother's wedding, and my whole family had a little bit of a sore throat, and we thought, we dodged COVID for over 2 years. And so we all got it at the exact same time. And so, I finally tested negative, I would say maybe just a little over 24 hours before having to fly to Detroit to start the tour. But for anybody who's had it, just because you test negative, there were, for a vocalist, lots of lingering things. Just, it was still in my chest. It was still in my lungs. I was coughing up a lung every time I sang a song. The day before the first concert, I couldn't sing half my voice. It was one of those things where I had to very quickly think of a set list for this show, because my mind was basically on, I really just hope we don't have to cancel it. And so, if I'm being honest, this set list came together very, very quickly this time around. And it was one that I really kind of put a lot of songs in this set list that I knew just gave me a lot of pure enjoyment to sing, that if I knew I was going to be miserable in my body, I wanted to be happy emotionally, and I wanted to feel like these were songs that, I didn't want to put myself through any weird square peg in a round hole hoops this time around. I just wanted to go out there and enjoy myself. I felt like we all deserved to just do what we love, sing songs that we've been excited to sing, and let the joy kind of overtake any other kind of challenges we might have tried to push ourselves through for any other tour, and at least start that way. And then I felt like I could kind of move the set list around and change some things and add some new challenges as we went along. But when I say I fell up, that first night felt really magic, and it felt like I had to focus like a tightrope walk to get through it vocally, but I did. The audience didn't know I was even feeling anything, and that's always a good thing. And then as I got stronger, we started thinking about ways to change the set list, and every time we tried to change it, it lost a little bit of that, whatever that spontaneous magic was. And it was kind of a lesson for me too, of that you can overthink these things as well. And sometimes when you're put in front of a challenge where you really don't have any other options except to just do what feels natural and feels great, it sets a boundary for you to play really, really well in. So we liked the set list when we did it. We knew we were getting fresh audiences mostly every night, and so we decided to hang on to it.
The show that Jay and I looked at, which was July 22nd in Kansas City, and it looks like a lot of the concerts you've had a very similar or the exact same opening. The World We Knew by Frank Sinatra and Shape of My Heart by Sting, which are both on your 2020 album Harmony, and a lot of songs from Harmony made the set list. One thing you said in your Chicago show was you expressed your affinity to British songwriters, and you were talking between Shape of My Heart and Robbie Williams' Angels, songs 2 and 3. You said you love British songwriters, and pop and rock music out of England is very inspiring and timeless.
Yeah, I've found them just over the course of my career to be much more genre bending than not. There's a lot of songs that come out of England. A lot of those songwriters that were ahead of their time as far as just incorporating orchestral elements. You think of some of the rock bands, Queen and things like that. You know, Peter Gabriel, Annie Lennox. You look at artists that incorporated a lot of actual crossover styles in their music that lend themselves really, really well, set up the ball nicely for singers that have more traditional voices or have more orchestral arrangements. It feels very natural for some of those songs, and especially some of the messages of those songs, something like Angels, the Shape of My Heart. It's always been a really natural fit.
I'm loving angels instead when I'm feeling weak.
That's not to say that songs from America don't do that, but I think there has been something kind of, when I look back at even some of the old Elton John albums and listen to those Buckmaster arrangements, they're operatic, they're avant-garde, they're just the most wild string and horn arrangements, and they could be done with a full symphony, and those were some of the great rock albums ever made. And so I've always been really inspired by that crossover element to the arrangements of the original songs in that part of the world. And when choosing songs to do, I find myself going there a lot for inspiration.
So as you get to the middle of your set, one of these really great highlights for me was, and I'll probably butcher her name, but is it Lucia Micarelli?
Yeah, close. Lucia Micarelli.
Lucia,
yeah.
Sorry. What an amazing player. Beautiful voice.
Absolutely.
I love her
Yeah.
interpretations of Queen, Led Zeppelin. How did you meet Lucia? And tell us a little bit about, I love watching you two play off each other. Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
Yeah, sure. I was preparing for my first ever tour. I didn't really tour much on my first album. My second album, Closer, was the first time I decided to do a tour. One, because I felt like I had built the vocal stamina to do a whole concert, but also because, as I mentioned, I finally had enough songs to do a concert. And we were looking for a way at the time to to showcase some of the violin work that was on those two albums. Joshua Bell had recorded with me on the album, and so we wanted to represent that. But we also wanted to add some musicianship on stage that gave some surprises. And Lucia came to us. She was recommended, I think, after she had been touring at that time with Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and we got a video of her. And we were, close to the same age, and I was watching her play, and I was just going, oh my God. I mean, the sound is unbelievable, but also the wildness within her precise technique, the abandon that she was able to have along with that technique was something very, very special. A lot of times you see classical players play and there is an abandon, but it's a controlled, it's a controlled thing. And so for her to watch her play, and for there to be such an emotional abandon with the technical prowess, was just something that there was a sound there that was just so amazing. And so as we became friends, and as we, did countless shows together, both on that tour and the Awake tour, I just absolutely have been enamored with her talent, and also knew it was a talent we would not be able to, have on stage with us forever. She's somebody who has flown from that nest many, many times and has continued to wow audiences around the world. And, I call her a Swiss Army knife, because she's now acting and she's singing and she's doing all kinds of things. And she's, she's expecting a child. So she's going to have her first baby, which we're all really thrilled about. This tour, because it felt like a homecoming for so many of us to just be out there again, we wanted there to be a sense of coming together, and with a renewed appreciation of where we've come from, where we're going, the fact that we are able to do this again at all. And I'd been catching up with Lucia periodically. We'd go out to lunch and just catch up on life and music and laugh and just have a great time. And at some point I just said, look, we're thinking of going on tour. Would you ever consider doing a tour again? And it's funny how, this last couple of years has changed everybody's perspective about what they'd be willing to try and do, and, new adventures. And she said, yeah, that's something that could be fun. And so, needless to say, we're exceedingly grateful that she's lent her talent to the stage with us again. It's great to see her again.
Would love to hear how you became familiar with the song She, which was a big hit in the UK in 1974. Americans might know the song from the movie Notting Hill. As the story goes, the film initially had the original version. The U.S. test audience didn't get it, and so Elvis Costello was brought in to record a version. What's the version that you looked to when you decided to play it? And this is also on your album Harmony from 2020.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've loved the song ever since Aznavour. I heard Charles Aznavour sing it. Of course, one of the writers as well. And I love the Elvis Costello version too. It falls into the category of a song that has been in my periphery for a long time, because I've been asked to sing it many times. I've loved listening to it, but not every song I love listening to necessarily feels like something that I need to, Grobanize. I don't need to, I'm not somebody who's always lifting my hand to say, hey, I got to do that. Oftentimes, and I mentioned this on stage, that, you as a singer, you get arrangements that change your mind. And that's always a good feeling when you see a blueprint to something that you've loved, but maybe you're feeling a little insecure about adding yet another version of it to the canon. And so I love those two versions. I know there's been countless others, which is why I was a little hesitant as well. It flows so easily, as so many of the Aznavour songs do, as a singer, for there to be so much room for line in the voice, we call it, when there's just, there are certain songs that have a lot of staccato in them, and a lot of consonants and a lot of fast moving words, and you're, this is all technical stuff, but your breath support is trying to fight with the scattered rhythm of a song, and you're trying to find your support and your breath and all that stuff. With a song like She, it's not only fun to interpret because it's just so fluid, but it's also, from any singers listening will understand that as a song in the set where it is such an incredible breath reset, because it has so much line in it. It has so much fluidity to it, that no matter where you are, no matter whether the weather is hot or cold, or you're distracted or you're focused, or one song went great or one song went terrible, whatever it is, it's a song that just, it sets your technique back to where it needs to be, because there is no other option. It's one of those songs that commands of your voice and of your breath and of your support, that fluidity and that line in it.
She may be the beauty or the beast, may
And it's also a song where the lyric is so beautiful that at the very least you can just focus on telling the story, and so much of the rest clicks into place. And that's another thing about those lyrics that are just so wonderful. But shout out to Vince Mendoza, who did the arrangement to it. I've loved Vince Mendoza's work, his solo work, his work with Joni Mitchell. He's been a music director, I believe, and conducted the Metropole Orchestra in the Netherlands. It's an amazing honor to have had a great arrangement from him, and so it changed my mind. I heard it and I went, "Yep, yeah, I'd like to lend my voice to that arrangement for sure."
One of the highlights for me, I love your interpretation of the Book of Love. I've seen Peter Gabriel. Oh, so good. I've seen Peter Gabriel perform that with an orchestra.
Yeah.
And I love your interpretation of that. How did you end up choosing that?
You know, I heard that song all the way back when it was Magnetic Fields with their original version. And then I heard Peter Gabriel's version with the orchestra. And, you know, again, it's just talking about just the crossover of some of these songs and how many, sometimes those elements are there and they've been there right in front of you all along. That song is a long time coming for me. Because it's not flashy, it's taken a lot of convincing of people in my orbit to start singing it. You know, I was always told it wasn't, you know, enough when your career was designed for the big notes, you know, and you know, you've got a lot of people need to greenlight things to, you know, in order for them to eventually meet an audience. I record tons of things. I sing lots of demos. I have lots of ideas, but you know, it's a little bit of committee at the end of the day, and there's some for you and some for me, and eventually it's a collaboration to what the final album winds up becoming and what the show winds up becoming. So that song was one that was always in my mind for me. I always loved it. I always wanted to do it. It was always one of those songs where I think because it was so, I found it always to be brilliantly and beautifully simple. But I think that sometimes to the corner offices, it did not have the, vocal, fireworks that check those boxes. So it started during the live streams. I had an opportunity to do some live streams during quarantine where we were just in a little black box studio in Burbank, California. And, you know, everybody tested and it was just a string quartet and my band. And, you know, they turned the red light on and 92 countries tuned in and nobody could tell me no. So I took the airwaves hostage and I decided to finally sing this song that I've wanted to sing for a really long time. And the response to it, which is another great lesson for me, was wonderful, was uniformly, you know, excellent. And I love the message of it. I love how simple it is. And I love that it isn't the fireworks like every other song. I love that it represents how we feel about the purest connection when we have that with somebody in a way that when you in the quiet of what that pure love feels like, it doesn't need the fireworks, that it's all, that everything else about it is enough. And that's in the lyric. You know, the Book of Love is old, boring. Nobody can lift the damn thing, but you can. I love when you read to me. It's taking the mundane and making it magical. And that's what I love most about the message of the song. But then I was inspired by the potential for the arrangement by that Peter Gabriel version. When I heard him play that with the orchestra, I said, "Oh man, well there's more to be done here with this." And as Peter Gabriel has done for so many of us for so many years, he unlocks lots of paths that so many of us have benefited from being able to walk down because of his foresight and his experimentation and his brilliance. So I'm simply walking down that wonderful path that he's laid out for us, and I'm just so happy to do it. I'll probably record it for the next album. I don't know yet, but I'd like to.
Great.
You know, one song people might not be familiar with. They might, but that's the song "How Do I Reach You," the last fail by Jesse Kinch. That was on his 2018 album, It's Not Like Everybody Else. Jesse was the winner of the TV show The Rising Star, which you hosted. Lasted one season. He got on stage and played with you at Jones Beach on July 8th and sang that song. And would love to hear about your relationship with him and how that song gets into the set list.
Sure. Yeah. I was asked by ABC to host this show. It was a big hit in other parts of the world, and it just didn't find an audience that summer. But I had a great time doing it, and it was kind of a weird concept in hindsight. But the cool thing about it was I got to meet a lot of really talented young musicians, and I got to watch their stories blossom. And I'm such a big proponent of that. I have an arts foundation. It's just my favorite thing about the position I'm in now is being able to help shepherd, young careers and put a light on programs that are helping young artists. And so to watch somebody like Jesse introduce his talent to an audience that summer was certainly it's just a huge highlight of doing that show, because from the moment he opened his mouth, we all went, wow, this is probably, his to win or lose. And he did in fact win it. And, he has one of those voices that, defies a lot of rules. It's so unbelievably powerful. It's raw, but it's controlled. And he's got an old soul, really old soul. He just loves that style from, the 60s and 70s songwriting and singing. And so he played a lot of those songs as well. And he's also, a double threat with the amount of guitar playing and voice. So anyway, I've been following his career. I was following him on Instagram, and I started to see posts from his family that he was battling brain cancer, and he had a tumor and was pretty touch and go for a little while, and is not out of the woods. He's still in treatment. He's still preventatively in treatment. He's got to watch it very, very closely, but he's had something like 2 or 3 surgeries. He's been in chemo for now, I think at least a year or two. And because of where the tumor was, it affected his speech. It affected his ability to play the guitar. It affected all of the things that have been his lifeblood. Like anybody who met Jesse during the Rising Star days, his whole life is music. His whole life is interpreting these songs and writing songs and singing. He's such a pure musical soul. So I got in touch with Rick, his dad, and basically said, hey, we're here cheering on the sidelines. Please give Jesse our support. We then asked him, is there something we can do to inspire him to get better in his recovery? Is there, I just said, is there a guitar? Is there something that's like his dream guitars, or something that would be really fun to give him to say, hey, this is on the other end for you? And he said, as a matter of fact, there is. And there was a very specific, very rare Gibson electric guitar in a very specific, very rare blue color that has been Jesse's Wayne's World in the plexiglass case kind of guitar for him. We reached out to our friends at Gibson and told them Jesse's story, and they were kind enough to reserve one for him. And so we were able to send him one. It was a little bit of a journey getting it to him. But I on top of giving it to him, I said, look, if he's feeling up to it, I would love for when we're passing through your area, Jones Beach is 20 minutes from where they live, would be honored to give him the stage as his comeback moment. And he came out and he just crushed it. It meant so much to all of us to see him be able to do that. And he's got a concert coming up soon as well, where he'll play that guitar we got him.
What a beautiful story.
He quoted you. He says this is a Josh Groban quote on his Facebook page a day or two ago. Instruments are more than just perfect trophy pieces. They share our journeys and stories and express our deepest dreams.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about this guitar is not only was it a dream guitar for him, but it got damaged on the trip to him. There was some internal damage. There was like a knob that broke off or something. And we were thinking to ourselves, do we wait? Do we send it back? We knew it would be months and months and months to get it repaired by Gibson if we had to do that. And, ultimately there was a lot of back and forth going on, and we were able to get a really, really great guitar tech expert to fix it for him. But you know what? That became part of the story for him too. And now the instrument has gone through some wear and tear too. And for him to feel like everything he's gone through and persevered through. And now the guitar has gone through a lot too, and it's got guts that had needed to be replaced and are broken, and is back to tip top shape. I think to that point, he feels like now he's got an instrument that is a representation of how he feels about music now after all he's been through, and it makes it even more special.
What a beautiful story. So Josh, you're a big Stephen Sondheim fan. In this particular set, you played Not While I'm Around, which is from Sweeney Todd. Tell us about your love for Sondheim's music.
One of the first things I ever listened to or watched musically in any genre was a VHS recording of Sunday in the Park with George. I must have been 9 or 10 years old, and watched Mandy Patinkin and Bernadette Peters, and watched and really listened to his compositions for the first time. And there was something about the way he wrote and all that I was learning about this painter that I would never, George Seurat would never have thought to think about a pointillist French painter at 10 years old. And here I was asking my parents about art, and asking about my mom was an art history major in school and taught art history to high school students before she had my brother and I, and I'm asking her about painting, and I'm listening to the chords, and they're so complicated, but I'm just loving them, and I'm loving the complexity of it, and so it was it was my aha musical kind of moment of, this is incredible. And I then started listening to everything else he did, and I started to appreciate more and more also with all of his shows, that I was learning about something that I would never have otherwise learned about through his music. And then as I was growing into my voice, and I was realizing just kind of naturally what kind of voice I had when I woke up in the morning, even though I like to sing all different kinds of things, the voice that I woke up with in the morning really liked singing his music too, and was really comfortable singing and interpreting his music. And so as I started taking theater classes and going to theater college and whatnot, it was just always a very, very natural fit. It's very rare that, there's lots of people who've inspired me in my life, and they can be inspirations, but aren't necessarily the most natural fit for me to sing on. Sondheim's music was always the perfect storm of inspiration, and also what my voice wanted to do. And so those songs have played a huge role in my life. Getting to know him and befriend him and be able to tell him personally how much his songs have meant to me in my life was one of the great honors of my life over the last 6 or 7 years. And he leaves just an enormous amount of light and inspiration behind, and music that will be treasured by so many of us. And I'm happy to keep that flame lit. And it's always great to sing his music on stage and to interpret it in different ways, which is why it's so wonderful to sing Not While I'm Around with Ellery Ward on stage during this show, because she's interpreting his music in ways that I've never heard before. And it's very, very cool to sing it with her.
In doing online research, there's one song I have not seen in your set lists. Maybe you've played it, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's probably on some wish lists, and that's Rod Stewart's Forever Young. That's the song you performed in an episode of The Office, and you played the younger brother of Andy Bernard, right? Played by Ed Helms. And, with the way that show has grown over the years, and that episode, Garden Party, came out in 2011. I imagine a lot of people in the audience have seen that episode and might know the song. It doesn't sound exactly like the original. There's a different take on it. Have you ever dropped that in a set?
I have not. And it is interesting because my comedy appearances have been really very just kind of organic. People will call me. Mindy Kaling messaged me and said, "Hey, we got a really funny role. We think would be good for you." I was on tour at the time, and I just dropped everything to drive out to Schrute Farms and have the best time ever with that gang. And, because I'm not, top 40, press all the time, sometimes people only know me for those little comedy appearances. Sometimes like somebody will come up to me on the street and be like, "You're the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia." I'm like, yes, I played myself. Yes, thank you. I am also a real person, not just the character Josh Groban. So sometimes I'll get requests to sing that. Sometimes I'll get requests to sing Kanye's tweets. Sometimes I'll get requests to sing Not Like a Bird from Always Sunny. I have had an amazing time working with some very, very funny people, and making a caricature out of myself is my favorite hobby. And so you never know. At some point I will do enough of those appearances where I could do an entire concert of just the joke song appearances, but that is a beautiful song on its own, even without the humor. So maybe this will spark finally some kind of change in this set list before the final show.
That would be amazing. So as you get closer to the end of your show, there's certain things that fans come to expect. What are a few of those songs? Maybe it's You Raise Me Up, but what are some of those songs that you can't leave the building without singing, or they'll chase you down?
Right. Well, I would say that one of the things that's always important to my fans is that we represent some of the foreign language songs on stage. I think they really like to hear. So much of the beginning of my career, at least, certainly was wrapped around singing songs in different languages. It's something I love to do. I love the challenge of it. I love how the languages change the interpretation of a song and change how my voice fits into it. And so there's always a couple of songs like Alejate we do in the show, and we do in this case one of the Italian songs, Alla Luce del Sole, and Say that I perform with Lucia. And then You Raise Me Up is a song that I've done on most every tour. The only tour I didn't do You Raise Me Up was we did a musical theater song tour for the Stages album, and we kind of made a conscious decision that there was almost going to be kind of a concept tour, that this was going to be really paying homage to the songs of the musical theater repertoire. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it fit in that tribute. It would have been really random. It would have been almost like kind of just like, oh well, no. Anyway, here's the hit. It wasn't the kind of show I wanted to do at that time. But when we do, our shows, it's one of those songs that I've sung it a million times. But every time when you hear the audience sing along and they get their lights out, and it means something so deeply to so many people around the world. I mean, it has become a soundtrack to so many people's lives. It's a beautiful thing to have something like that you can cap the night off and do it. I usually don't do it as an encore. I usually do it as just the final song of whatever the normal set list is, and then I save the couple of encores for songs that people hopefully didn't know they wanted.
Well, let's wrap it up there. Josh, thanks for joining us. It was great to talk. Good luck on the rest of the tour.
Such a pleasure.
We'll be waiting for that Forever Young and TV comedy tour.
I'm gonna need to shake it up after this for sure. So we'll definitely put it in the suggestion box. Thank you both so much. It's been a thrill to be here.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
All right, take care, Josh.